again, all very welcome to our session this evening. And just to outline what we'll be covering, we'll be looking at a couple of topic areas. We'll be looking at the Springboard Plus courses that are on offer for 22-23. I'll be presenting that area. And Janice will be talking to you about micro-credentials, introducing the whole area and that new concept and our new offering for September. Suzanne will talk about recognition of prior learning and how to apply for that in the process. And then we're going to finish off this evening with the panel around questions that you may have. And we've had a number of queries from people who have sent them in to us who weren't able to make it today, and we'll be able to share this recording with them. So just to kick off and tell you a little bit about Springboard Plus and the ICT skills conversion. So these are programs that are being funded through the Higher Education Authority. And our Springboard Plus are offering free or subsidized courses. And as I go through the presentation, I'll tell you a little bit about how that works. But essentially, if you're unemployed, the course for you is for free. And if you're in employment, you will receive a 90% subsidy for the program. They focus on areas of employment, so things in the area of ICT, green energy, business, manufacturing, and engineering. They're generally in kind of high-performing areas and areas where there are skills deficits. The Springboard programs are usually 1 year in duration. They're all part-time, they're flexible, and they're online or classroom-based, but they will make sure or facilitate you to keep working while you're studying. And I think that's the key thing about the programs. They're very suitable for people who are working. They're from levels 6 to 9 on the National Qualifications Framework, so a lot of varieties in what's offered. And we do offer recognition of prior learning, and Suzanne will dig in a little bit more to that as we walk through the presentation today. The ICT skills conversions courses are either 1 year full-time or 2 years part-time. And the ones that NUI Galway are offering this forthcoming academic year are part-time. The levels are level 8, which will give you a higher diploma, or level 9, which will be a postgraduate diploma. And again, prior learning can be recognized as part of your entry. Now, there's a lot of paperwork around the Springboard and the ICT skills conversions program. So I've tried to break it down to make it as simple as I can for you this evening. But essentially, there's two criteria you need to think about. One is the nationality requirement, and that relates to people who are living full-time in the Republic of Ireland. You must have a valid PPS number, and you must meet nationality or visa requirements on 2 counts. One is that you either are an EU, an EEA, a UK or a Swiss national. That's one of the nationality criteria. And if you don't meet that particular criteria, you can also be eligible if you have a stamp 4, a stamp 4 EU FAM, a stamp 5 or a stamp 6 on your residency permit. So all those allow you to be eligible. And then finally, just one more, you either have to be living in the EU, the EEA, the UK or Switzerland for 3 of the last 5 years. So there's a couple of things there to consider and to check that you're eligible first. The status of application is always determined by the first day of the course. So you must have all of your documentation in date by the course start. And there's a number of items of documentation that you will be required to provide us with to prove your status. And we'll be asking you for those about 6 weeks out from the course start if you're offered a place. So in terms of in fact, I'll pop back one other, we're on target. So in terms of the funded courses that we have on offer at the university this year, I've broken them down into kind of 3 sections. So the first section is the level 8 courses. So we have a number of them in areas such as medical device, medical technology and regulatory affairs, which is very much so focusing on the regulatory structure and requirements of the medical device area. We have a diploma in automation and control, and that very much so is focusing on Industry 4.0 and the skills required for automation engineering professionals. We have a diploma in corporate environmental planning, And that is an opportunity for students to look at the environmental challenges and the opportunities for industry to develop sustainable systems and policies. The Diploma in Medical Device Science is very much so focusing on science and engineering behind the medical devices, and you'll be studying subject areas like anatomy and physiology and biochemistry, as well as some engineering related subjects. And we also have the Diploma in Software Engineering, and that really will be focusing on computer programming and design, as well as a number of very important software engineering methodologies. And all of this suite of courses are 1 year, and they're 30 ECTS in their credit weighting. The next group of courses are what I would term the level 9 funded programs. So these are the ones at the postgrad level. So we offer a postgrad certificate in creative arts management, which is a new course to our offering. And that's looking at the skills required in production, arts management, curation, and it's very much so hands-on. You'll be involved in creative arts labs, and you'll be looking at advanced production techniques, and you'll also have a work placement as part of that course. Our second course on our listing is the MSc in Ag Innovation. We've had that program funded a number of times. It's been extremely popular every year, and it focuses on entrepreneurship skills for the agri ecosystem and the entrepreneurship requirements. And so there'll be a number of modules taught over the year, and you'll also have a thesis component at the end. Another new program to our listing this year is the MA in Digital Art, Design and Cultures. And that course is about bringing digital media production skills to the creative arts area. And it includes things like image, interactive media and performance. And there's a huge emphasis on the imaginative use of the communication technologies. All three of these courses are 1 year. The postgraduate cert is 30 credits and the 2 masters are 90 credits. So a heavier workload in the master's program, but both are very much so delivered on a flexible basis. So it does allow you to combine work and study. And finally, the group of courses that are funded under the ICT skills conversions are also at level 9, and there's 2 courses in that grouping. We have the postgraduate diploma in cloud computing and software development, and another postgraduate diploma in cybersecurity and software development. Both of them very much so focused on the skills and the labour shortages that we're seeing in industry today. They're 2 years part-time, 60 credits, so a student will do 30 credits each year. There are modules taught and a project placement at the end, but if you're not in employment and you do want to have a work placement, that will be facilitated as part of the 2nd year of your program. So thinking then about how to make an application. So the key thing is to check for the academic eligibility criteria. So most of our level 8 courses require you to have a level 7 entry requirement. And then the ICT skills conversions will require you to have a level 8 award already. So check for the academic entry criteria and if the specific subjects that you need as part of that entry. But then also check the Springboard entry requirements that I mentioned earlier. And they are the nationality requirement. And then the other piece then is around whether you're in employment, unemployed, a returner, or whether you're a recent graduate. So you make your application not at the university in Galway, but through the springboardcourses.ie application system. So it's directly to Springboard, and the link is very clearly listed on the website. So you go to the online portal, you create your account, you select the course you're interested in, and then you fill out the details. Now, applications are currently open. We have rolling offers, so we will be making offers on a regular basis because our objective is to make sure that we fill our places. The closing date can vary. So in some of our programs, it will be the end of July because we know demand will be early on for the courses, and then others are early August. But you are encouraged to check the course web pages because places will fill early. And the other key thing about the Springboard process this year is that you will be required within 6 weeks of your course start to provide all the documentation that you need to prove your status. And that's really important for us to get that in on time in order for us to be able to finally confirm your offer of a place. Couple of contact details. You can call us at the Centre for Adult Learning at any time. You can contact us on our email address at adultlearning@nuigalway.ie, or you can go directly to the springboardcourses.ie webpage for more course details and an outline of what's required and what's covered in each of the courses that we have funded today. What I'm suggesting we do for this webinar is that if there are queries that you have regarding Springboard, to put them into the chat as we go through, particularly now, if you'd like. And what we'll do is we'll move to our next presentation with Janice, and then after that we'll have Suzanne's presentation. And what we'll do at the end then is we'll come back to the Q&A, and we'll take all the queries that have come in the chat and any that you may wish to add or ask at the end of the session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to call on Janice and ask you to share your screen and carry out your presentation. Thanks, Janice.
Hello, everybody, and I'm delighted to be here today to chat to you about micro-credentials. So Nuala talked very eloquently there about the larger offerings that we have in terms of the longer courses and different qualifications that you can get, which is wonderful. But we are also now offering these micro-credentials, and it's part of a new project set up by a fund, and I'm going to just tell you a little bit about those, funded by the Government of Ireland under the Human Capital Initiative. And there are 7 universities taking part in this project. And the idea is to develop a suite of smaller, shorter courses that you're able to take as part of, you know, if you're working and you're busy, or you've family and you've just a short period of time to study, these micro-credentials might be the way to go. So there's 7 universities taking part, and all of our micro-credentials, when we have them developed, will be advertised through a national online portal, so that you'll be able to go to a central place and have a look at what's available across the country. And then you will be directed to the university that's offering the particular micro-credential. So the idea behind them is that they will be short, and then some of them will be stackable. So you'll be able to add them up with other micro-credentials and create a larger award. So all of this is at a very early stage, and we're developing these at the moment. So it's definitely a work in progress. So the first aspect of micro-credentials is that they are a record of learning outcomes that a learner has acquired following a small volume of learning. The second is that they're designed to provide the learner with specific knowledge, skills, and competencies. So we're trying to make them very specific to what the future skills needs that have been identified by enterprise and industry. So they will be owned by the learner. So we have a virtual rucksack there, because we're hoping over the time of the project that these micro-credentials will be able to be shared and used in other universities as well. They may be standalone or combined with larger credentials, and their benefit of these particular pieces of learning is that they're quality assured to university standard. So there is a lot of offerings by other providers, I suppose, but our university makes sure that they're all quality assured, and if you take any course in the university, you will be guaranteed the same quality of learning experience. So the micro-credentials will be between level 7 and 9, and the ECTs that you can gather from completing these micro-credentials are between 5 and 30. So they're small pieces of learning, but there is potential, and we're working on this at the moment, of building them to special purpose awards, like, for example, a professional certificate or a professional diploma. So I have a little video created here, a little animation of the key features of a MicroCred. be watching that for the whole evening. So some of the key points, I suppose, are around upskilling and reskilling. I won't go through them all again, but because you're busy people with families, with jobs, these micro-credentials might appeal in that you mightn't want to do a full course over a year or something, that maybe 8 to 12 weeks might be enough learning for you. And then the learning is broken down so much that maybe just one small aspect of a course might be of use to you. So we're working on these at the moment. So here are some that are in the planning stages, or else, you know, kind of a bit more further on in development. So regulatory compliance will give an overview of the regulations governing the development, manufacture and marketing of drugs and medical devices. So that's one. And some of these have been modules developed as part of larger courses, and these pieces of learning have been identified as ones of most interest to people. So some are part of larger courses as well. So we have German for business, we have human anatomy and physiology, and Nuala alluded to this course earlier on as part of a larger award too. We're looking at one in environmental management and energy management. We're also looking at this very interesting and topical one at the moment, which is honeybee health. We're developing one around consumer psychology. Another one we're exploring is finance for non-financial managers, law and innovation, active consent, non-violent resistance in practice. So they're all ones that we're currently working on developing, and we will have them up on the website in the next few months when we're further on in their development. Some other programs we're scoping out and considering are one on sustainability management practice and policy, applied digital skills, the principles of machine learning, the future of artificial intelligence, introduction to programming in Python, founder selling for startups, and effective leadership and professionalism for the early years sector. So some of these are just at consideration stage, and some are a little bit further on in development. So some important dates, and I think Nuala talked about this again. This will be sort of more, I suppose, once we get into the flow of the micro-credentials, the system will be that applications will be open from April, and then the applications will close 4 weeks prior to the course start. There will be roughly a 2-week processing time for applications, and then student registration once it's complete by our office, the MicroCreds office. Then you will get your module information distributed a week prior to starting the module, and then the teaching will start as per module listing. And the timeline for acceptance and access to the virtual learning environment is a minimum of 5 working days. So that's just to give you a little bit of an idea of the length of time it takes from application to actually starting your course. So to apply for a microcred, I've just taken a little screenshot here of the website. So you go in under colleges and schools and you look for adult learning and professional development. We're currently building the website for microcredentials because again, we're kind of early on in the project, but you will be coming in through this CPD courses section of the website, just to give you a little bit of a steer as to where to find us. And then there's my contact details. The other grouping that we're working with besides yourselves as students is we're engaging with enterprise and industry to look at current enterprise and skills needs. And we're going to try and work in partnership to co-deliver and co-develop some of the programs that we're offering. So thanks for listening to me.
Great, Janice, thanks very much. That's been really helpful, and we'll come back to some questions that have come in shortly. Susanna, I might turn to yourself. We've talked about generic programs in Springboard. We've talked about microcreds. Some students have great experience both formally and experientially, and they can put that to great use in their course application. I'll get you to talk us through the RPL process.
Yeah, sure, Nuala. Thank you very much. Lovely. So thank you very much, Nuala, and good evening and welcome to all who are watching this webinar. So I guess there's many reasons for wishing to enter or return to higher education, such as advancing your career, achieving an ambition or demonstrating to friends or family that higher education is achievable for everybody. So recognition of prior learning, or RPL, acknowledges the varied means by which learning happens and provides alternative routes to and through higher education. It does this by offering individuals opportunities to have their prior learning formally recognised, and it renders this learning visible and gives formal value to the knowledge, skills and competences that individuals have obtained from previous qualifications, from on-the-job learning, involvement in social and community activities, through caring responsibilities, via sport or other leisure activities, or just by means of life experiences more generally. So what is RPL? Well, recognition of prior learning, or RPL, is a process that allows you to gain admission to a course of study or to gain exemptions from some parts of a course based on demonstrated learning that has been achieved prior to admission. So we would argue that there are two types of prior learning that can be recognised in the RPL process. The first is certified learning, and this is learning that is course-based learning, which takes place in an organised, formal way. It's specifically designated as learning with specific course content, learning outcomes, a stated duration for the course, and normally you'd have, learning supports included with it, and it leads to formal certification. On the other hand, then the second type of learning is experiential learning. So experiential learning is learning that is acquired from informal and non-formal learning activities. So informal learning is not organised or structured in terms of objectives or time or learning support. Informal learning is in most cases unintentional from the learner's point of view, and it takes place through life and work experience. It typically does not lead to certification, and this is what we normally call learning from experience. Then non-formal learning is intentional, but it normally takes place through planned, organised learning activities, but it doesn't normally lead to certification. So examples of non-formal learning might be learning or training activities undertaken in the workplace, the voluntary sector, or in trade unions, and possibly in community-based settings also. So then in terms of, well, what then is recognition of prior learning? Well, this is a process by which your prior learning is given a value. It's a means by which prior learning is formally identified, assessed, and formally recognised by a higher education institution as part of their modules and programmes. And this makes it possible for an individual to build on the learning that they have previously achieved and to be rewarded for it. So typical RPL candidates are people who are mature students returning to education. They're employees with significant experiential learning already. They're people who are seeking to improve their existing qualification. They're people who are seeking to retrain or to maybe change their career. And they're people who are in occupations that require formal qualifications. So what can RPL offer you? Well, and why are we talking about it here this evening? Well, I guess RPL is capable of multiple purposes within the education context. As a process, it can enable you to gain entry to a course if you do not meet the standard entry criteria. It may allow you to get advanced entry to a course, for example, to get direct entry into year 2 of a programme. It may allow you to earn exemptions on modules on a course. So RPL is a key element that supports lifelong learning and upskilling. It formally recognises people's on-the-job experiences when they are working towards a new qualification. We argue that RPL is a learning process in and of itself, both for learners and for those that are involved in the process. So what are the benefits of RPL? Well, RPL can give you access to a course that you might not have otherwise achieved. It can mean that there's a shorter duration for you to achieve your qualification. For example, if you get advanced entry into maybe year 2 of a programme rather than having to come in directly at year 1. One of the other benefits of RPL is that it can mean you have a reduced workload. So if you're exempted against some modules on a program, you have less work to cover in a particular academic year. RPL can also maybe mean that there's a reduction in your tuition fees. If you get module exemptions, you may benefit from a reduction in your course fee. RPL itself is a learning process, and learners who engage in it will benefit from increased self-esteem and self-confidence, because the process itself helps to engender that in you. So what next? Well, if you decide that you might want to use RPL, or if you need to decide, well, is that for entry to a program of study, or is it for module exemptions? The next step then is to contact the course administrator or the course director of the program that you are interested in to discuss the options that program has for RPL. The next step then will involve you gathering your evidence. So if you've done prior courses, you'll need to pull together evidence of those prior courses, your exam transcripts, for example, course documentation, so that you can explain the information about those courses that you've undertaken. If it's prior experiential learning that you want to present to the university, you may need to gather evidence of that. So it could be pulling, a comprehensive CV together. It may be gathering letters of recommendation from previous employers. So pulling all that together as part of a portfolio of learning. And then you will be required to submit an application to the university to accompany that evidence that you have gathered together. So I guess the next step really is looking to see whether you can undertake all those steps and making contact with your course administrator. But if you have any general inquiries or queries about the RPL process, feel free to reach out to me, and my name and details are on our university website. If you just put in RPL in the search engine, you'll find my details, and my email address is suzanne.golden@nuigalway.ie. So Nuala, that's all I'm going to cover this evening. I think I'll just stop sharing my screen now, if I can just come back to the meeting controls. And I'm sharing. So hopefully now, yes, we're back to the normal.
Yeah, we're back to the normal screen. Thanks very much, Suzanne. That's really helpful. I might maybe just check out some questions and maybe ask Janice to come back in as well, in terms of maybe a couple of queries around micro-credentials. And just maybe I'll pick up one thing kind of that has came in earlier today, Suzanne, from somebody, a query around RPL that wasn't able to attend tonight and was keen to kind of get a response on it. So this question was in relation to the notion, you talked about certified learning and experiential learning. So one is I have a formal cert and certified, or other, the experiential, I've been working 10 years as a manager, and where can I get that to count? How can you, or can you combine the certified and the formal learning in an application? How can we do that, or is it possible?
Yes, well, an ideal or an example of how that might take place, Nuala. So if, for example, you're looking at a program of study that is at level 9, and the entry criteria for that particular program might be that you need to have, for example, a level 8 undergraduate degree. Well, a scenario where you might be able to combine certain, you have a degree, but it's a level 7 degree. And to bridge that gap, to bring it up to a level 8, you might be able to then combine your significant work experience to bridge that gap, to bring your entire learning block up to level 8. Mm-hmm. That process of using your work experience is a mechanism to enable you to just jump to that next step in terms of the prior learning that you would present then to enable you to gain entry to a program of study.
Okay, very helpful. And then just in terms of evidence that you might need to submit, can you just give us one or two examples of what that would look like? I mean, transcripts from an exam,
Yeah,
that sounds like
for your
certified
learning, it's relatively straightforward. I mean, everybody who has done a formal certified program will have a transcript that will detail the results that they've had in relation to that program. They will normally have a formal parchment that they would have received at graduation. So that usually forms one element of your certified learning evidence. But you also might like to have some additional information in terms of the details of the modules that you undertook in the previous program. So just to flesh that out a little bit, because sometimes the assessor in NUI Galway who would be looking at that evidence might want to know a little bit more about, well, what did you cover in the modules that you did in the previous program? So that's the certified learning. And then when it comes to your experiential learning, well, this really is about you presenting the learning that you've acquired from your experience. So it's not necessarily that you've spent, for example, 10 years working as a manager. We want you to tell us, well, what have you learned by virtue of that experience? So I guess part of that would be, you know, presenting an extended CV, as I mentioned earlier, where you really outline, you know, the roles and responsibilities that you have in your job. It might be to include examples of the type of work that you undertake. If you have, you know, writing reports, for example, is a key part of your job. Examples of your writing, examples of reports that you've contributed to. So things like that can really flesh out learning ability and demonstrate, you know, to the assessor in NUI Galway who would be looking at that material exactly kind of what your capabilities are.
Yeah, and that detail is really very helpful. So thanks for that one. I'm just going to kind of, we've had some questions come in, as I mentioned. I'm going to ask our participants if there's any questions you want to ask. Just if you want to raise your hand, I'll call your name and you can come on audio and ask that question. Or if you're not comfortable with that, just pop your questions into the chat. So make sure to raise your voice now, as they say, virtually or physically, and we'll take any questions. Just while people are thinking about questions and what they might have queries around, Janice, I'll come back to you because one question that has arisen before and another one came in this week around the micro-credentials. Like, are they all online? Are they classroom? How long are they? Can you gave us a great flavor of what's coming on stream. So could you talk a little to us about how they'll be offered and kind of duration? Because I think people are interested in what the time commitment might be.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Nuala. Very valid questions that are coming in regularly. The idea of the microcreds is to have them as short as possible and obviously as flexible as possible. So part of that flexibility is going to be around delivering them online, and some online and using virtual classrooms, so Zoom, Teams, that sort of facility or application. And then there will be a lot of pieces of learning that you will have to do in your own time. So obviously that would be very flexible. So there'll be maybe pieces of podcasts that you might have to listen to, or little videos that you have to look and review. So a lot of that work can be done while you're doing other tasks, you know, or part of your day. So you can fit it in wherever you can. So the idea of these microcreds are to be as innovative as possible so that we can make them, you know, very doable by people who are actually really busy people, who all of us are these days, but just for these pieces of learning, we're trying to make them as flexible as possible. So some of the courses will go from 8 to 12 weeks. Some might creep a little bit longer than that in terms of just finishing out projects, but in general, we're trying to keep them as short a time period as possible so that people are kind of complete within a short period of time.
Okay, sounds good. And then a key question, and all students want to know, how are they going to be assessed? Will they be exam-based, continuous assessment? What's in store for them?
Yeah, well, for adult learners, we find, and you know, to Nuala, that you find that continuous assessment is a better process. And actually it helps people engage with the learning as they're going along to be continually assessed. So there won't be a formal Leave Cert exam at the end for people to be traumatized.
Yes.
So the learning will very much be integrated into the program and the assessment along with that. So they'll be able to see how they're progressing through the module as they get marks for doing small pieces of assessment, leading to the bigger award at the end.
Yeah, and of course, very applied, and being able to roll out into the workplace everything that's learned in the module is really what it's about, and it makes it very relevant. So thanks for that, Janice. That's really helpful. I had another query regarding Springboard, and the query was, well, are there any categories not eligible or ineligible, I should say, for any of the program areas? So just to kind of reiterate or remind people, there's kind of four categories of student that can apply for courses. One is the employed or the self-employed, so that's fairly straightforward. They can meet, and once they meet the nationality criteria, they can apply for any of the Springboard Plus courses. That includes the 1 year and the 2 year ICT skills. The unemployed, so that's somebody who's in receipt of a Department of Social Protection payment. Once again, that they meet the nationality criteria, they can apply for the majority of courses, but not the ICT skills conversion, not that 2 year part-time course that we spoke about at MUI Galway. So that's maybe something to remember. Then the returners, and the returner is somebody who is a homemaker, somebody maybe who had caring responsibilities in the home, or it could be somebody who's dependent on a partner or spouse for 9 of the last 12 months on a Department of Social Protection payment. They can apply for all of the courses. So that the homemaker or the returner is a homemaker or somebody on caring duties or dependent. If they themselves are in receipt of a Department of Social Protection payment, then they can't be classed as a returner. They must apply under the unemployed criteria. And then the final group are the recent graduates, and that's really somebody who completed their course in 2021 or 22 at a level 8. They can apply for the courses. So that's just maybe clarification on that. There's a huge amount of detail on the springboardcourses.ie website. I tried to simplify it tonight for people because it is complicated in the sense that there's quite a bit to look at. So I've kept it light, kept it simple, but do have a look at the website. I think it'd be very valuable to do that. And I see a question coming in on the chat, and for the certificate courses, do I have to be living here also? And yes, the nationality requirement is something to look at. So what I would suggest, Ashley, is to take another look at the springboardcourses.ie website and come back to specifically with the question if it's still not making sense, or if you think you might be falling between the cracks on eligibility. Drop us an email and we will research it and look at it for you, because sometimes on the face of something somebody mightn't be eligible, but yet when we dig in they could be. But we just need to make sure we have all the details of individual cases so that we can check that out with the HEA. So don't be disheartened if you think on the face of it you're not eligible, but generally you have to be, to meet nationality, you have to be in the EU, EEA, UK or Switzerland for 3 of the last 5 years. That's one of the criteria on the website. I'm conscious of time, and we've come up just to the 40 minutes and we promised everybody a short webinar. Suzanne, I'll just come to you. Any last minute pieces of advice for anyone considering an RPL application or just considering a course in general? What would you advise them?
Yeah, well, I think probably the first thing in terms of RPL is to start early with your research. So if you think RPL is something that you may be interested in, or it might apply to you, now is the time to start touching base with course coordinators, because people really underestimate how long it can take to gather their evidence. If you have to go back to a prior institution to try and get your transcript, sometimes that can take actually quite a long length of time. So that really probably would be my key point, is start early, Nuala.
Yeah, and I think great advice, Suzanne, really great. And Janice, any last words of advice from your end in terms of MicroCreds?
Yeah, just to keep an eye on the website, because we will have some more exciting options. Once September comes and we get into the full build of the programs, we will have some exciting options, and it might, it might be something that people are really interested in.
Yeah, I'm sure. And as I say, it's a new concept. It's a quick short course which just might fill a skills gap and give somebody the taste for doing stack something later on for an award, as you mentioned in your presentation. Well, I just want to conclude by saying thanks very much to Suzanne and Janice for joining me this evening. Thanks very much so to all our audience this evening. There were a quiet group, but certainly a couple of questions in the chat, and very happy to take follow-on questions directly to the centre. You can contact adultlearning@nuigalway.ie. If you can't remember the other email addresses, that'll get you started, and we'll point you in the right direction of the person who can answer your question. So thanks very much, everybody, and a very good evening, and thanks for your time. Take care.